Okay, we're back with another week of touchdown, playoff style. Missed a week, sorry about that. Everybody was out doing their holiday thing.
Spreading holiday cheer.
Spreading holiday cheer.
Yeah.
So last time you saw us was the Week 17 wrap-up of the season. Anyway, as always...
Can we talk about how the regular season...
We will. We'll get to that. Let's no spoilers, all right?
Sorry about
No
that.
spoilers 2 weeks later.
Exactly.
In case you've been in a game.
Anyway, I'm your host, Joel Turpin. With me this week, Philly Chris, Burdette, and Katie Aichhorn. Buddy Dave couldn't join us this time, but we know he's thinking of us, and I think he threw his picks my way, so we'll figure out what he had.
I'm sure a number of impressions will occur throughout the course of the show.
Absolutely. In the meantime, I'm not going to bother starting it off with a recap, because that's all we're going to talk about in the first half is the Week 1 playoff games, the wild card games, and we'll just kick it off. And I'm stuck now talking with the most boring game of the week in my perspective, because A, neither of the teams was all that exciting, and B, the game itself was pretty weak. The Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers.
Wow.
And this was a boring game, but only if you like good football.
I tend to favor sucky football. That's why I'm a Browns fan.
If you prefer the sucky version, the sucky variety of football, then it had a lot going for it. The score was kept kind of close, at least through the first 3 quarters or so, mostly by like miscues and errors.
It ran more like a blooper reel than anything else.
It did. The Arizona defense, first off, the Arizona defense was solid. They played a pretty good game. They did as much as you could if you've got no help on the other side of the ball, basically. But, that Arizona offense, God bless them. Ryan Lindley, I believe, ended up with 78 passing yards. Playoff record.
Yeah. On the low end.
On the low end,
yes. Let's preface that.
It may, without Kurt Warner in the mix, that might have been the Arizona high, as a franchise. But for the playoff run of real normal franchises, that was pretty pathetic. Cam Newton on his side had almost broke the 200-yard mark, almost broke the 2-century mark.
Well, let's say that he's already broken his back. That this is impressive that he's still playing.
Fair enough. He gets points there, and I mean that's all they needed. But it was not an impressive 200 yards if you were watching it. There were some throws that were just missed receivers. There were some just kind of weak duck kind of throws. They came because they just kept having opportunities, and eventually you're going to connect if you're not Ryan Lindley. So that's the theme for the week. The running game was not there for Arizona either. They've been dealing with injuries on that front as well. The difference was, they had some running on the side of the Panthers. Jonathan Stewart ended up with 123 yards.
Not to be confused with Jon Stewart, as
I believe.
The comedian.
Not to be confused with the comedian Jon Stewart. Right? Exactly. So, in the end, Carolina 27, Arizona 16. Really, the last chance that anybody had in this game was there was a turnover close to the goal line in the third quarter, and Arizona did nothing with it. They had a chance, a fumbled punt, I believe it was, and they got the ball, nothing. Yeah. So, at that point, the game was officially over, and that's enough talking about that game from my perspective.
One additional thing from my side, only because we talked a little bit about it last week, why were the Arizona Cardinals not looking in to get a replacement quarterback?
Yeah.
I read this morning, actually, or maybe it was yesterday morning, I can't quite remember now, the days just bleed together, and that is the fact that when asked, Kurt Warner, because we also brought up his name here, stated that had someone reached out to him, he would have put on an Arizona Cardinals uniform and would have played in the football game.
Dude, how amazing would that have been?
And he also said he's in really good shape. He's not sure if he was in actual starting quarterback football. But let's be honest, exactly, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. I would have preferred to have seen that game with Kurt.
Everybody watched that. I mean, and this week, if they'd have won, and he'd be going into Green Bay, basically.
Unbelievable.
Well, I was surprised Brett Favre didn't come back out of retirement again. Because I think Brett Favre at the Cardinals, that seems like a good fit.
Why not
I guess
put
they'd
that
still
jersey
been
on?
Seattle, but whatever. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that was the game that kicked things off. After that, we had the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, which Katie's going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was no win situation for me in this game. I hate both teams with a vehement passion. We've known that anybody that follows the show knows that. However, I hate Baltimore slightly less, only for the number of years I can hate Baltimore.
There you go.
Okay. I would have thought the other way. But
No. Only slightly less. But nonetheless, Joe Flacco. When some people roll over and die in the playoffs, Andy Dalton, some people step up in the playoffs. And January is Flacco's month. Baltimore finds a way to win. They might look shaky all year, but they find a way to pull out wins in the postseason. And this game was no exception. The only thing that I would have liked to have seen more in this game is had Le'Veon Bell played. It's a big if. Could that have changed the face of the game for Pittsburgh, because their offense was just not what we've expected of it most of the season. We've seen Roethlisberger be able to throw 5-6 touchdown passes in back-to-back weeks even, and he couldn't hit anybody. Running game was gone. Passing game was Anytime that Baltimore was able to put up a touchdown, Pittsburgh settled for a field goal, and that leaves you with a score that's about half, doubled in favor of the other team. In fact, it was the fourth biggest win in playoff history to take place in Heinz Field.
Okay. I mean, we're not used to seeing a Pittsburgh that's that weak on defense. It's really weird. I mean, they kind of got back to their roots a little bit this year in the running game side.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, that had deserted them to some extent with Bell's injury. And yeah, I think it would have made a big difference. I don't necessarily think they would have won the game, because
it would have been a lot closer.
But it would have been a much more competitive game with him in there.
And I said, once you stop being able to protect Roethlisberger, I mean, he got sacked 5 times. And he's throwing interceptions, and
because they don't need to key on the run, so they can key on the pass, and that
did not go well for them either.
Absolutely.
So, this game went in Baltimore's favor. I'm curious to see whether Baltimore keeps its hot streak. Sorry, Dad, I'm cheering for the Ravens this week. Sorry, Dave.
Wow.
Actually, no, I'm not sorry at all, Dave. Brady, it's your time to go down. Go spend some time with your hot wife. Your season needs to be over.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm calling for it.
Enough said.
But that we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing from my side with the Flacco side of things. I mean, with all the Flacco haters out there for however long this has been going on,
all the flack that he gets.
After they won the Super Bowl, they gave him that amazingly high, most people thought overrated contract, making him, at the time, maybe the most high-paid player in the league. I can't quite remember.
Right.
But really, this is exactly what the guy does, and it's exactly what the Ravens do as well. They just somehow seem to play the great football at the right time of year, and actually sometimes makes me think a little bit on the Pittsburgh side of things as well.
Yeah.
They have up and down seasons, but as a franchise, they're really solid, and you had 2 solid franchises going at each other. And yeah, I also would have liked to have seen Bell in there to see if something would have happened, but yeah, it is what it is.
It's also interesting to kind of compare and contrast the Harbaugh brothers at this point in their career, whereas a few years ago, Jim was the hot ticket, especially leading up to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was more impressed with him, even though John had done quite well and was always winning a game or two in the playoffs. Yeah. And then he wins the Super Bowl, and ever since then, the trajectories have kind of crossed a little bit. But
I mean, I don't know what Jim's name's on everybody's lips in my hometown, but that's a bit for different reasons. Right
sure,
now.
Of course.
Not for a sucky season at San Francisco, but more for the anticipation of his return to the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I mean, he's obviously still an amazing coach in his own right. He's going to do well probably wherever he lands. But John's got that consistency that's really hard to pull out, where he just finds a way, to get into the playoffs just about every season, despite being in a tough division there, at least with Pittsburgh and recently with Cincinnati. Every season it's been tough. And, then they win one game like clockwork. And you look at teams like Kansas City, like Detroit, like Cincinnati, and you see how hard it is just to get that one playoff win for some franchises.
Yes, it is.
And these guys do it every year. It's crazy. I mean, it's impressive, and kudos to them. Whether or not they go any further,
I
they've
don't know how
already
that-
made something out of the season.
I
so.
don't know how they do it. I really,
And for
if
me-
there's a secret to success, I'd love to know it.
And I also like the fact that John's just a bit more subdued, quiet.
Sure.
He coaches his team. He's not this bigger than life personality that can rock a lot of boats and those types of things. And
Well, I think
yeah.
one thing I admire from him as a coach, and something my dad always said to me that a coach should be, he gives the credit to the team when they win, he takes the blame when they lose. And I said he's really quite...
He's a team guy.
He's a team guy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, that was the second game. Then we move on to Sunday's games. Chris is going to kick that off with a game that he and I sat in a bar and watched over a few beers. Cincinnati at Indianapolis.
Maybe a few too many beers because I don't remember. No, just kidding.
Did those two play?
Yeah, Cincy, Indiana was at Indianapolis, and the Colts, to start off, they're moving on, 26-10 win. And you had two really evenly matched teams to start off with as far as a record's concerned. Cincinnati was 10-5-1. Indianapolis was 11-5. Both teams have kind of had their ups and downs in the season. Sometimes you just weren't really sure exactly which team was going to show up. Whether it was Indianapolis kind of on a roll and then they get absolutely shellacked by Dallas, or vice versa with Cincinnati coming in and losing some games as well. But yeah, I mean, what's there really to say at this point? To me, this is about maybe more what is really going to be happening with Cincinnati and in that organization after this season. This is an organization that hasn't won a game since a playoff game since 1991. They were 5 straight losses under the Marvin Lewis era up until that game. Congratulations, it's now 6 in a row to tie for the most consecutive playoff losses of all time. Andy Dalton had 3 consecutive losses at the helm as far as the quarterback is concerned, put that at number 4 straight playoff losses for him. But at the same time, the question to me is you have to analyze that football game and the Cincinnati organization for what they had on the field at that time, in my opinion. Now, granted, you have a lot of losses consecutively in the playoffs, so that's maybe not so great for your organization, front office, personnel, etc. But the fact that A.J. Green, their all-pro wide receiver, was out with concussion, you had Jermaine Gresham out with back problems, Andy Dalton had flu-like symptoms leading up to the football game. There had been discussions whether or not he was even going to possibly play on it. And yeah, I mean, in the end, the football game was the football game. You then had to rely a lot more on the running game. Jeremy Hill started out really quite solid in the first quarter of the football game. I think he had about 38 yards rushing in the first quarter along with a touchdown run. And Giovanni Bernard actually came up quite well in the passing side of things, which he's lost his basically starting spot on the running back side of things, and played quite well receiving the football. But the rest of the team just really couldn't get the thing started. It was 144 yards in the air for Cincinnati compared with 376 yards on the air for Indianapolis. Still the questions with Indianapolis were there. Hey, where's the running game? Can it always be offense? Especially with the last couple weeks where Andrew Luck hasn't quite done well, especially against Dallas. But then following it up with a game against Tennessee, which, not really a great opponent there at that point. And yeah, I mean, listen, at the end, the game was very, very tight leading into the second half. It was 13-10 at halftime. So even though Cincinnati wasn't really doing much, which was kind of expected, with the people being out and being away at Indianapolis.
And it being January for the Bengals.
Exactly.
Exactly, January for the Bengals.
But the fact that they were actually to keep it at 13-10 at halftime had some hope for the organization. But, I mean, what's there to say? They did absolutely nothing in the second half. Indianapolis put up another 13 points and four field goals for Vinatieri, and that's it. I mean, game over, 26-10, absolute shellacking. And yeah, I mean, I think there's already been talk about whether or not Marvin Lewis continues to lead the helm there in Cincinnati, and whether or not there'll be changes. But I think we do have to at least consider the fact that you had 2 of your best receivers, 1 tight end, 1 wide receiver out in that football game, and what really was there from an expectation side of that.
Well, the question is, to me, is talking about Cincinnati and where they go, and we can talk more about this later in more of an off-season type show. But, did they underachieve in this playoff game, or did they overachieve in the season to even get there? And I tend to fall on the latter because I'm just not blown away by all of their pieces. There always seems to be 1 or 2 weak links, and whether it's Dalton or not is another question. But
They look
he definitely-
remarkable when everybody sinks, but
Yes,
they very
they do.
rarely
And there's,
sink.
there's a
That's
lot of
the
teams
problem.
like that in the NFL right now, and again, yeah, the consecutive losses in the playoffs is bad, and there's been some times when there's been injuries to Carson Palmer back in the day, or things like that have been kind of mitigating circumstances. There's always going to be some
Sure.
of those, but
after having
After
that happen
six.
6 times in
Yep.
a row is
You start to say it's not. Yeah, there's got to be something else that's causing this problem.
Yeah.
If Marvin Lewis and the Bengals part ways either after this season or let's say next season, I'm sure he's going to go somewhere else, and I'm relatively sure he's going to be pretty successful wherever he goes, at least to a certain extent. But yeah, it does become a bit of an issue, and there's no way to avoid it. And it's everywhere it happens.
especially with a guy that's
San
been around.
Diego,
Yeah.
Kansas City,
You've
wherever.
been around an organization for that long. Now, Andy Reid's circumstances were a bit different for leaving the Philadelphia Eagles, but it was just kind of time to move on. I mean, they had the
Exactly.
2 bad seasons at the end, but yeah, I mean, this very well could be the time when it's just time for the Cincinnati Bengals and Marvin Lewis to separate.
Anyway, a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
We'll save that for a post-Super Bowl wrap-up or something, perhaps.
Yeah.
We'll see. I've got the good game, too, though. I started out with the worst game. Now I get the best game at the end, or really, to my mind, the only actual good game of the weekend.
Unfortunately.
Dallas 24, Detroit 20. And I'm not saying this game made me a Dallas fan by any means, but I found myself hating the Cowboys less than I have in years past. So that's, that's
kind of a
something.
backhanded
It's a
compliment.
backhanded compliment.
I don't even understand what you mean by that, actually.
Yeah, I mean that maybe I'm not in America where I've got to deal with the legion of bandwagon Dallas fans that I'm sure
Yeah.
are jumping back on as we speak.
Somebody's dusting off their starter
They're
deck
dusting
right
off
now.
their Emmitt
The
Smith jerseys
starter
and their
jacket.
Michael Irvin cocaine things.
Yeah.
And they're hopping back in.
Did they sell those?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was an item you could pick up at Target.
fan.
Yeah, a little cocaine there
No,
with
yeah.
Michael Irvin's
Let's be honest,
number on it.
it's at Walmart.
So yeah, in the '90s, it was hard to watch football, and you had to either love or hate the Cowboys in the '90s, and I went on the latter side, and I have reveled in their demise in the last 12 years. Jerry Jones, nobody really likes this guy, even Cowboys fans. So it's easy to hate on the Cowboys a little bit, I got to admit, but hey, credit where it's due. He's put together, he and his staff, whatever, he's gotten out of the way enough to allow his staff to put together a team that is decent and is, maybe really good. We'll see here in the next week or two. And, they've focused on the running game. They've allowed their defense to move some people around, and they've focused on turnovers. They've played to their strengths. He stuck with Jason Garrett, who was a very questionable call coming into the season, and that's paid off. He looked like a much better coach this year and in the playoff game, and they found a way to do it. So let's talk about the game, right? All this talking about Dallas.
Was there a game?
Was there a game?
Did it get played?
Yeah. Detroit came out and looked dominant in the first, not the first half, but the first 12 minutes of the first half. They just looked like they were going to take it away. They were running the ball. They were passing the ball. Matthew Stafford looked like the Matthew Stafford that everyone always imagines he is, and yet he only is about 50% of the time.
Sure.
Where he's got the big arm and he's got the receivers to throw through. I mean, you throw two. I mean, you see the difference that Calvin Johnson being healthy makes, whether or not he's throwing to him.
Sure.
But just the presence of him on the field, whenever it was one-on-one coverage, boom, he went there. Whenever they double-teamed him, he went somewhere else, just like he's supposed to. They looked really good. And then right before the half, the turning point of the game, the Cowboys have the ball. They throw it to Terrence Williams for what looks like a first down. There's an offensive pass interference call on him, very questionable. Almost as questionable as the one that came later in the game, which we'll talk about too. And that could have been it for the Cowboys. That could have been the turning point of the game that we talk about later, where they're out of it.
Yeah.
And yet, come third down, he goes right back to him. 76-yard touchdown, 74-yard touchdown. I don't have it right in front of me, but big touchdown is the point.
Yeah.
He breaks through the first tackle and just runs like a madman, and that's the whole game turned on that. Now, Detroit came back, scored a field goal, made it a 10-point game at the half, 17-7. But it wasn't the same. The flavor had changed. Dallas had its mojo back, and in the second half, they came out and they outscored Detroit. And Detroit scored only 3 points the rest of the game. Dallas scored 17 points in their last 3 possessions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the third quarter was just a bit of back and forth and field position and not much happening and some turnovers. But in the second half, Detroit had 3 turnovers. Dallas had just big play after big play, especially again near the end of the game. The fourth quarter was dominated by Tony Romo. They didn't have much running game, but Tony Romo made up the difference. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the guy was Mr. January this year. So,
oh, wow.
You know, I mean, it was.
They were going to be 8-8 this season, I think.
My call was that they were going to be horrible.
Yeah.
They were going to be.
They
just
wouldn't
off
even
the ball.
get to 8-8.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
was so. I was completely off on Dallas. Mea culpa.
And Romo is the
Romo's,
leading quarterback of the regular season.
He's looking like a legit MVP candidate, even more so after this game. And, hats off. He looks like one of the better quarterbacks in the league at this moment. Mm-hmm. Again, people are going to have to see another game to really start talking about it. But, if he wins up in Green Bay this week, there's going to be a lot of talk about a sea change. That's only the second time in his career that he's won a playoff game. So, all that said, there's one play that we got to talk about for just a moment that everybody's been talking about. If you watch it, it's a non-play, it's a non-call, but it was arguably the biggest point of the game besides that touchdown in the first half. Basically, there's a route on third down. The Lions are driving. They've had some momentum shift. They're up by 3 at this point. They're driving. Matthew Stafford throws to tight end Brandon Pettigrew. It was not a good throw, first off. It would not... I don't know if he'd have caught it if there had been no defender there. Mm-hmm. But he basically hits the defender in the back. The Cowboys linebacker Anthony Hitchens. Hitchens doesn't turn around to look at the ball. He runs into him. Quite often that's a pass interference. Occasionally it's a non-call. The timing was bam, bam, whatever. The problem was, of course, the referee threw the flag almost immediately. They announced it as pass interference. And then, without any explanation, they went and picked it up. And, of course, it didn't help that the TV announcers were like, that is pass interference. The referee that they had on with them that's usually right was like, that is pass interference. So you had all the confirmations that you normally get. Everybody's in a rush to agree with the call. And then they pick it up, which the other problem is they just never do. I mean, you almost never see that in the NFL, that they just reverse a pass interference call. It just doesn't happen.
And there wasn't
with
even
any regularity.
a time to challenge it.
And there was no way to challenge it. That's not a challengeable call.
Exactly, and I think that's really a big key here and what I take away from a lot of these types of things is we've moved more and more towards the direction of the challenging of a football call. And what is a challengeable football call and what's not a challengeable football call?
If there's no
and
call
why?
to reverse,
it's so
then
arbitrary, it seems. That
exactly. And the tough thing too is, I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of technology. I think it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. Do you then just have the opportunity to challenge everything? I think that maybe slows the momentum down, kind of takes away the whole referee side of things. But, when we have hindsight 2020, meaning when they have a guy like, and I actually don't remember who it was. It might have been Pereira, the guy who actually is the in-booth,
right?
The guy, the official guy who's really knows his stuff. He has the time to watch the slowed down replay of it. When those umpires are on that field looking at it, they don't have the luxury to do that, which makes, I think, even more so, how do you then overturn that football call if somebody so theoretically so solidly saw the call, and then without the luxury of having the replay, which obviously we were able to do and then people were able to do later on, how do you then as a team, as a squad out there, meaning the umpires, make the call to overturn it?
Yeah, I think that's it. What confused me about it, I said, does he have mental replay or something? Because I said he so quickly threw the flag that it seems unlikely that was his gut reaction. He saw it, he threw it, done. When did you second guess yourself? Are you just scared of being run out of the stadium?
The only explanation that they've given at this point is that they talked after the play,
Sure.
and one of the other judges said, "I think I had a better angle, and I don't think it was pass interference." And so this is where all the conspiracy theories come in, and all the people on the internet and Twitter, and and they're like, okay, well, this guy and that. But really, up until that point, I think the game had been called, if I was going to say one way or the other, a little more in the Lions' favor. Again, a questionable offensive pass interference on third down that could have, or second down, that could have made the difference in the game at the end of the first half. So
there was a lot of buzz also about a missed holding call, I think, as well.
Well,
yeah.
and then there was, in this particular play, it got worse because they were saying it could have been holding, and then it could have been pass interference, and then you had Des Bryant walk onto the field without his helmet on, which is supposed to be an automatic 15-yard penalty.
There were like 9 things with that play, but she's also talking about another play, which was third and something, third and 13, or third and less, I think, or whatever. Third and 13, let's call it.
Third and fairly long.
Yeah. And this was an interesting thing with all the stuff that was going on in that football call and the game from a referee side of things. The head of the NFL's referee committee, however exactly you call that person, decided to actually make a stand on it. And what I found to be interesting was that he made 2 strong statements. One was that maybe this wasn't a pass interference. We can call it kind of maybe, maybe not. But that there should have been a holding call prior to it. So defensive holding prior to that. And then in a separate call as well with the Sioux side of things, that there should have been also a holding on him, which then would have led to a 4th and 13 versus a 3rd and
Well, actually, I mean, if they'd made both the calls, it would have been replay 3rd down.
Yeah, but no, this was a different different one as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is the fact that the NFL's head of
head referee,
exactly, referee committee, whatever you want to call it, actually came out and acknowledged the fact that he thought that those 2 calls were bad. It makes it an interesting conversation from my side of things. What really then is the direction forward from the replay side of things? We talked about it. There's certain calls that are reviewable. There are certain calls that are not reviewable. Do we then open up the possibility of having reviewable penalties into the future?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting.
Well, and, back to the game. The reason that this played out like it did was at that point he has 4th and 1. They have 4th and 1 around midfield, and the Lions there. Everybody now, of course, with hindsight, is saying they should have gone for it, but I totally get that because on the road, momentum is completely on the Cowboys' side. When you saw him punt it away, you're just like, oh man, that's gonna end badly. Is there anybody that didn't think that was going to end badly for them at that point? And it did, and you just knew it. At that point, my best hope, if I was wanting the Lions to win, would be that they would score again after Dallas scores the go-ahead touchdown because you just knew it was going to happen. Yeah. And, on the other side, Jason Garrett had a 4th and 6 a little earlier in the game when time was running down, and he said, let's just go for it. Similar place in the field. The football god smiled on him. He throws a hit Witten for a nice big gain, kept the drive alive, scored the touchdown, stayed in the game. Lions, they chicken out. What happens? They punt 10 yards after taking a 5-yard penalty. Yeah. They should have just gone for it. I mean, obviously, again, hindsight, but it just, to me, it made sense, again, after complaining about a Chiefs game where they went for it at the wrong time. Again, this to me is not going for it at the wrong time.
For sure.
But it is what it is. The game is over. Romo acquitted himself, so we can talk about that, and we'll save the Lions eulogy for another day. Okay, well, I think that covers our games from the wild card round. We'll take a very short break and be right back with you and talk about the games that are upcoming.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, welcome back to a frigid Golden Harp here for the second half of Touchdown. Shooting in the basement area where it's not technically heated during the winter months, I think. So
we have hot food.
They have hot
beer.
food. There you go, yeah. Cold beer, hot waitresses, I'm sure too. So.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah.
No plug there. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, it's time. It's time to talk what everybody has been waiting, bated breath, edge of the seat type thing. We've got to go back and talk about the final week of the regular season. Not really talk about the final week of the regular season like the games, but what everyone cares about. We've got to recap our season picks and how it all played out. Now, first off, I'm going to say Katie and Mark made picks for the weeks, and I didn't bother to total them because who cares? They weren't in the race. The race was really it was all about the people that were here all season, and that's Dave, Philly, Chris, and myself.
Joel, I thought you were going to say something profound about why you didn't tally them, and you did.
I did.
Which was awesome.
I mean, namely, I was going to lose, just wholeheartedly lose anyway.
Exactly.
So. Why bother?
Yeah,
Thank you for sparing me the misery.
Yeah.
So, going into the week, just a quick recap. Philly, Chris, and Dave held a season lead of 42 wins to my 41, ahead by 1. Could I come back? That's what everybody was wanting to know.
And
could Joel come back
down the stretch
and pip him at the goal or at the race? Yeah. So anyway, here we are. Dave went out on a limb on many of his picks. He was out there. Let's be honest.
That was our nothing to lose week.
That was
wasn't it?
Yeah.
But at the same time, he had something to lose.
True.
He did. He had something to lose, but he went out there. He took some big ones, including Arizona with Ryan Lindley, for example, etc. In the end, he went 3-3, which in general is a pretty respectable week for us on touchdown, and nothing to sneeze at. But he went 3-3, ended the season with 45 wins. Unfortunately, that put him in third place for the season.
Well, somebody has to.
I did catch him right at the end there. I went 5-1, a solid 5-1. Only missed on Eli and the Giants beating the Philadelphia Eagles.
Or not beating them.
Not beating, yeah. I mean, I picked them to beat the Eagles. They did not. That was my loss. And so thus I ended up 5-1 to come in with 46 wins on the season, one ahead of Dave for a solid second place. Because my buddy Phil and Chris here also went 5-1 to end the season with 47 wins and win our inaugural touchdown picks. Trophy, which I have here. Now this says FCS Turnier Erste Platz, which in German I do believe it means touchdown, first place 2014. I think that's what it means.
How about that?
I don't speak German, so it could be anything really.
Now, normally when you get these trophies with, so you have to kiss it. So I mean, I'm going to.
I thought you had to drink milk out of it. Or is that only the Stanley?
Yeah, we'll put some milk in that later. There he is, the trophy winner.
And I think you have to do one of these also.
Right.
At least this is what I see the golfers do, and like the tennis players when they win championships. So
well played.
I'm gonna stick.
I expect to see that
I'll stick with
right on the mantelpiece, or
I'll put it in Dave's place.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
above the bed, or wherever it is that you keep your trophies at home. So
you keep your trophy in the bed, don't you?
If you
know what I mean.
What's her name again?
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so moving on. That out of the way, we'll talk a little bit about this week's upcoming games. Once again, I've got 2 to speak about because I'm covering for our buddy Dave, and I'll kick it off with one of those that you don't have to have me do back-to-back games. I'll talk about Baltimore at New England. Yeah. So I'm not going to do it in my Dave voice because it makes my throat all gravelly, and then I need a hot tea. So we'll go with my Joel voice for this. Any other game, any other team, the Patriots would much rather see any other team coming into Foxborough this week than the Baltimore Ravens. Why, you ask, if you haven't been watching football over the last several years? Well, because unlike other teams in the league, Baltimore has gone into Foxborough in the playoffs, and 2 out of their last 3 matchups, they've won. In New England.
Other
teams don't do that. They're supposedly, yes, most difficult, impossible to win, blah, blah, blah. Joe Flacco, always nothing. Tom Brady, he's a demigod. Flacco's beating him. 2 out of 3, again, in New England. They don't like this matchup, folks. Now, that being said, of course, New England has been a much better team over the course of the regular season than Baltimore has. Baltimore limped into the playoffs. They needed a KC victory in Week 17 to even have a chance to make it. They beat a Pittsburgh team who was up and down also all season and was missing their star running back. But they won. They turned it on. They threw, Joe Flacco looked like the playoff wacko for Flacco guy. He was great. Torrey Smith and Steve Smith both stepped it up in the passing game. Steve had over 100 yards receiving. Torrey had a touchdown. They look good. We've got some drama here, I guess is what I'm saying. So this is not the game that you're thinking of, okay, I've got a number 1 seed and we got somebody else that's sneaking in and it's a gimme. The AFC quite often goes to form in the playoffs, but this is a tough game. And it's between 2 battle-tested teams, 2 teams that have got, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks on their side, Super Bowl winning coaches on their side. Yeah. It's got a little bit of everything. I'm excited about this matchup. I'm going to let you guys do your picks, and I'm going to come back. I'll give Dave's pick.
That's weird.
Dave says that he's going for New England. I'm not sure. He sounded a little nervous on the phone. He didn't sound like he was going to give it. Really, when I'm watching this game, I'm watching for Gronkowski to have a big game. I'm watching for the New England defense and how do they deal with those receivers. Baltimore's receivers are very speed-oriented, especially Torrey Smith. I mean, you can't let him get past you deep, and if he does,
he's cutting.
He's cutting, and Flacco can hit those long touchdown passes, and that's where he can be a dangerous quarterback. In years past, you've often seen in the playoffs when Baltimore wasn't successful, it really seemed like a big part of it was they would reel him in. They would let him play during the season, and then playoff time they'd be like
super conservative.
Yeah, and they would have him throw nothing but dump off passes, and they would stick with the ground game, and it just didn't seem to work well for him. And when they let him air it out, I think that gives them their best chance to win. So I'm hoping to see that. I don't have a dog in this race. I could care less really which one of these teams wins. They've both won Super Bowls in recent memory, so there's no, let's root for the team that hasn't won it in a while type thing. These guys are there every year. Same with the other 2 teams in the AFC, as we'll see. So whatever. Let's just root for me, I'm just rooting for a good game. Dave's picking New England. I'll let you know my pick after this.
Yeah, so, from my side of things, obviously the glamour pick in this is New England. I mean, let's be honest. Tom Brady, he's at the tail end of his career. What's going to happen once he's gone? You've got Gronkowski out there as well. And they're playing at home as well, so there's a lot of things in favor of them. Even though, like you said, Baltimore's been this giant slayer, not the New York Giants, but the New England Patriot Giants, apparently, during playoff time in Foxborough. So, hey, who knows what's going to happen. My gut, and I went to university in Baltimore at Loyola College, now Loyola University, go Greyhounds. So my gut then is sort of pulling for Baltimore in this game. My concern for the longest time with the offense of Baltimore is, even though you just gave a lot of props, I guess, to the receiving crew of Baltimore, it's not like they have any super... Sure, they have a former All-Pro in Steve Smith,
sure,
who now is 95 years old, and I think he comes normally with a cane to the office. Field, whatever you want to call it.
But then he throws it away and gets 100 yards against Pittsburgh.
Listen, he's done pretty well given the circumstances and that type of thing. I think there's too much in favor of New England in this football game. As stated, this era of the Belichick-Brady time is coming to an end. They've had some losses against Baltimore in the past. My heart is rooting for Baltimore in this football game, especially, anything against Dave is always fun, especially because our teams are out. This is obviously the loser version of the show. Even
Patriots, the only helmet that's forward this week. Is
so
the Patriots,
I hate to do it in one side, but I'm going to go with New England in the football game, even though my heart will be with purple and the Ravens.
Kind of on the opposite side, I can never put my heart fully with
purple
and the Ravens.
Enough said.
That being said, I'm tired of Brady.
Yeah.
I've said it all season. I very rarely root for the Patriots. I've got nothing to lose left in this pick'em game. I'm going to cheer for my division, which has been strong all season, and I'd like to see at least a team in my division move forward, because it'd be a shame to have them all go out so quickly, considering how competitive that division was all year.
I like it.
SEC.
SEC.
No, I'm sorry, that's the other. Okay.
Ooh,
Sorry.
Big Ten.
That's the
Big
one
10,
that
Big-
always roots for
Big
their
12,
own
Big
division.
10,
there.
12.
No, Big Ten. No,
Big
Big
10,
Ten is
12.
the Big Ten
12.
made up of 14
14
teams.
Big 10, 14.
No, I have even been known to cheer for Michigan in the postseason just to make the Big Ten look good.
Oof.
It's hard to make the Big Ten look good.
It
Not this,
is.
not
Not
this
this year,
postseason,
of course,
but
yeah.
still. Nonetheless, that's kind of a principle. I would like to see something come out of my division a little bit further ahead, and I'd just like to see Brady go home, snuggle Giselle.
But he is a
It's
Big
over.
Ten guy.
Yeah, and he played
There
for
you
that
go.
team up north.
Yeah, enough said.
Traitor. Anyway, go home, snuggle your wife, play with your cute kids, polish your rings. Your time is over. I say, Ravens take it.
That was Dave's kids.
It was.
Oh, they are Dave.
Play with Dave's kids. Yeah. Sorry.
Next
love that.
episode of Maury.
Okay, well, fair enough. All right, I've been thinking about it. I can't in good conscience go with Baltimore. I think that for Baltimore to win, everything has to go right. They've got to have a game where they do hit the long bomb and they do find a way to keep the score close and they pull it out at the end type thing. I think New England's going to beat them and maybe really beat them solidly, because I think New England's not going to want to keep it a close game. They're going to put it out there and try to get ahead and pour it on, and that may just work this time. So yeah, I'm gonna go with New England. Thought about it, New England.
I'm happy
Okay.
to be the voice of dissonance.
Yes, well,
Of
we've got at
reason,
least
maybe,
one.
even.
So
Yeah.
okay, Chris, Carolina at Seattle, the marquee game of the week.
I mean, where do we really start with this football game, actually? This is this whole dreaded NFC South division. In Carolina's defense, they are now on the season 8-8-1. So they've actually reached 500. Not only that, yeah, and now they're headed to a 12-4 Seattle. I'm going to call them the Super Seahawks, because that's sort of Supersonics and Seahawks kind of combination action there. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Supersonics even exist anymore?
Yeah, they do. They play in Oklahoma City. They're the Thunder.
Oh,
That's
there's
why.
Yep, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So
I
they're-
should have worn my Thunder gear. I didn't know we were talking basketball.
Well, I mean, so they're headed there. Arguably, and I don't know many people who would disagree with that, the Seahawks are the hottest team in the NFL right now. They've won 9 of their last 10 football games. The only game that they lost was against your Kansas City Chiefs.
That was who it was. I knew it was somebody.
24-20 away at a time when there was still a little bit of uncertainty, but they've actually come back with a vengeance. Now, in Carolina's defense, they have won actually their last 5 football games. This is after they've actually lost 6 straight. So 5 straight wins, that was preceded by 6 straight losses. One might say, hey, 5 straight wins, that's pretty good. But let's also think about who they beat during that time frame. New Orleans, Tampa Bay, no offense, Katie, but Cleveland, Atlanta, and completely disheveled, out of place Arizona team in the playoffs, where your boy.
Still never got on that bandwagon. Still never
Still
on the
not giving
bandwagon.
Arizona their props?
I mean, I think, as much as we knew this was happening and the fashion in which it actually had happened, we said this before, I really would have liked to have seen Carson Palmer there down the stretch to see what they really actually could have done. Nevertheless, it is what it is, and they've beaten 5. I mean, listen, you put 5 wins together, doesn't really necessarily matter who you're winning. If you're winning football games and you win out the season, especially this late in the season, good things can happen. So I'm going to sit down and say, hey, I've got a little bit of confidence in Carolina. They're on a bit of a roll. Although we talked about it a little bit, Cam Newton might not have looked the best against Arizona last week, with the fact that he was struggling at the beginning of the season, coming back and basically kind of building on the foundation. And let's be honest, it's not like he's got a whole bunch of high-end, hardcore Calvin Johnson-style receivers out there, although they do have Kelvin Benjamin, rookie.
Solid. Yeah.
Arguably, sometimes will turn into a potential All-Pro. along with Greg Olsen on the tight end side of things. So they have a couple weapons, but they traded away Steve Smith in the offseason. Didn't really leave them with too much stuff. Jonathan Stewart actually has been playing a whole heck of a lot better. And that defense that was so solid last season, they were number 2 in points given up and yards given up. I mean, they really had a really solid season last year from a defensive side of things. They've really fallen off the table this year. It was 15.1 points a game last season and 23.4 points a game. I mean, significant. Over a touchdown difference, and obviously that's changed. But listen, if you're a Carolina fan, I think you have to go with the fact that you've won 5 straight. Things are moving forward in that direction for you. Can you guys keep gelling as a team and putting down your, again, I say the hottest football team in the league with the Seattle? And from a Seattle side of things, I mean, listen, we all basically rooted these guys out at the very beginning of the season. Dave went as far as saying that, guys were going to get hurt and not even in the game at the end, blah, 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 blah. But listen, they started off 3-3. They won their next 3 before losing against the Chiefs at that point. So they were at 6-4. We're basically saying, gosh, as good as Arizona looks and as good as San Francisco even looks, they're going to be the team out looking in. And then they just absolutely put the crunch down. They're number 1 defense against the pass, number 3 against the run, number 1 against points. I mean, they're absolutely stellar. From the beginning of the season, where they weren't really able to put enough pressure on the quarterback. Still, the sacks numbers are down, but they're actually pressuring the quarterback a lot more than they were at the beginning of the season. Quarterback was getting a little bit too much time in order to put in the pocket and putting a little bit too much pressure on the cornerbacks. My opinion, at the beginning of the season, they changed that quite around a bit, putting a whole heck of a lot more pressure on them, forcing the quarterback into bad decisions, and as a result, not getting nearly as many points and opportunities as they were at the beginning of the season. As far as the team itself, from an offensive side of things and a locker room side of things, there was a lot of question marks at the beginning of the season. Percy Harvin, they got rid of him because he was a bit of a, as we like to say, a cancer in the locker room. There were questions as far as Russell Wilson's ability to lead and be a leader in the locker room as well. And then all of a sudden, as stated, they go on the 9-1 run, and all of that garbage that was talked about those guys at the beginning of the season basically went to the wayside. And yeah, I mean, listen.
They taught Sherman how to have a press conference, didn't they?
They taught Sherman how to have a press conference. And actually.
No, it wasn't Sherman.
It's Marshawn Lynch.
It's Marshawn Lynch,
yes. Well, and Sherman's also done a few things, some wacky little post-game conferences and stuff. But on that topic, I just want to see Seattle continue to win because, let's see, the last week of the season, it was the thanks for asking.
Thanks for asking.
So, Marshawn, can you tell us a little bit about that run that you made and made everybody look stupid, and you run through 15 different guys and killed everybody and got into the end zone? Thanks for asking. Marshawn, can you tell us a little bit about, you didn't start the game because you had the stomach problems and, looked like a little bit iffy. What were you thinking about at that point? Thanks for asking about my stomach. I really, thanks for asking. The week before it was, yeah. So it was, hey, Marshawn, can you tell us a little bit about how that play went and what you were thinking? Yes, yeah, right, yeah. Absolutely not responding to any question. As I say, for me, I just want to see the guys keep winning to see. And I mean,
just to watch Marshawn Lynch in a press conference.
And then Super Bowl week. I mean, come on, what is he gonna be doing there? So anyway, listen, let's be real.
Impersonations. Think of them all.
Come on. As far as the team itself is concerned, from an offensive side of things, let's be honest, the running game is really where those guys excel. Whether it is Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, running through guys, balling over guys, getting into the end zone, working however he can, and then also Russell Wilson. Interesting thing about Russell Wilson is, whether there's a designed run play or really just has an absolute knack for just staying in the pocket as long as he needs to stay in there to give the receivers a chance of getting open and throwing a ball to them. And when he sees either the pressure or feels the pressure, he's amazing at getting away from that pressure and then picking up big yards. I mean, he's got more rushing yards than the vast majority of the running backs in the NFL this season. So, gosh, I mean, what to say at this point? I'll do it at this point. They were also my favorites to get into the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season. I stick with Seattle beating Carolina, and who knows what's going to happen with those guys. But yeah, Seattle in this football game.
I think if you're Carolina, you've got to say, we're in a better place now than we expected to be.
Yeah,
we dominated our really, really competitive division.
Yes.
We came out on top. We knocked off Matt Lindley, and that right there, it's a win. It's a winning season.
Yeah.
Ryan
Have you
Lindley,
been-
but I
oh,
don't know
excuse
how
me,
you could
Matt,
get that
I don't
wrong.
know.
Yeah, but let's be honest, I mean, who would know that?
Jeez.
Yeah.
At any rate, I think Carolina maybe needs to evaluate. Okay, what were our goals at the beginning of the season? I think they far exceeded them, and yeah, I can't imagine that if they knocked off Seattle. Well, I will eat my shoe, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, now I'm rooting for Carolina because that's going to be interesting. Do you get sauce with that, or
Yeah.
like a little ketchup, or some
I'm
hot
gonna
sauce?
need a steak knife and
Okay.
ample amounts of sour cream.
Yeah, and I'm good if you want to cook it first. That's fine. You want to boil
Maybe
it? That's
some ranch.
yeah,
I'm going to guess it's going to also require a lot of alcohol.
yeah, probably.
That may happen.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll try to get that on air if that happens. Dave also took Seattle. Oddly enough, he didn't give me any notes on that, so I'm not sure what he was thinking. But he went with Seattle.
We often don't know what he's thinking,
No.
I think is fair.
My thought is here. Look, Carolina. These are some good-looking guys. I mean, Luke Kuechly. This guy's like a supermodel.
I mean,
I mean,
he is.
Cam Newton.
I'm...
That guy's like GQ.
Sure.
You know, if this was
Yeah.
some sort of runway competition or like Mr. Universe
Well,
or
let's-
whatever.
I'm buying the Panthers 2015 calendar. I tell you that right now.
I think the Panthers win this
On looks.
Yeah, on looks. I think that's if that was the competition. However, that's literally
Not-
the only way I can think of them actually winning
Yeah.
in Seattle. I mean, if they don't throw down a runway and a catwalk right before the game, then the Seahawks win this. But
You don't know what'll happen.
you
Well,
don't
no,
know.
I'd like to see
it's
Marshawn
any-
Lynch on a runway.
Any given Sunday, yeah. I
I'd
mean,
like
if we're
the walk-off.
comparing,
What do you think he'll say?
I mean, if
We're
it's those two
getting
going up against like Richard Sherman and whoever on Marshawn Lynch,
Lynch.
as the poster boys,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's my. I'm not calling for that upset, but if that happens, look out.
Yeah.
That's a whole different game. Yeah, Seattle.
Done.
Okay, Katie, Indianapolis and Denver.
Yep. Well, we've got young Grasshopper versus the Master this week, and Denver facing its, Manning facing his former team. We've seen this matchup before, namely in week 1, and it ended 31-10 in favor of Denver. Now, things have changed a bit, and I'm going to recap where are we now on both sides versus where we were on week 1. Unfortunately, it hasn't really changed much in Indianapolis's favor.
No.
Because Indianapolis was able to put up 400 yards on Denver, where some people are kind of going, Denver's going, we don't really need to play our A game anymore. We're up by enough to, let the boys run around. That'll be fine. Welker's back. Welker was suspended in that game. Welker's looking to put some hurt on receivers. When he's in the slot, it's a little tricky. Excuse me. Demarius Thomas playing well. Julius Thomas playing well. CJ Anderson playing well. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Peyton's arm later in the season. He's only thrown 3 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. Well, who needs to throw touchdowns if he can get the ball on the ground? CJ Anderson, I think, is going to be very key for them this week. Indianapolis, however, has the best passing offense in the country versus a really strong Denver defense. I don't know if even the strength of Luck's passing offense, which does require a lot of luck, in fact, because he's on and off. He's sometimes makes these incredibly questionable throws that you go, but when he's firing on all cylinders, he can't be stopped.
Last week,
Perfect example, but in prior weeks going, ooh. Anyway, Denver has the number 9 passing defense against the pass and the number 2 defense against the rush in the entire NFL. I think this is going to go in Denver's favor. One, simply for the fact it's January in Denver.
yeah.
Indianapolis
that's true.
plays inside all year.
Yep.
Not to say that it's not cold in Indianapolis, but they play inside all year.
Yep.
And I think that's would be a really tough thing to pull off. I really like Indianapolis for next year. I think once they've done a little more development with the stars that they've got, a former Buckeye in Dan Heron, I think he's going to start to put up a lot more yards. You always thought when he was playing for Ohio State, I had friends come visit and watch a game and go, why are they booing their own guy? And I go, they're saying boom, boom. Okay. I think he's an up-and-comer for them, and they've got a lot of talent in T.Y. Hilton, and Luck is still developing. But I think veteran Manning is going to make this happen for them now that he's got Welker back, and he's got too many weapons. I don't think Indianapolis can overtake. Sadly. I liked him.
Sadly.
Are you guys now asking me what I think?
I believe that is the
Thanks.
the point we.
Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I don't really have too much to add here. I do think the weather could be a factor. Dome teams tend not to fare all that well when they have to go outside to the elements. I didn't
a mile into
exactly,
the
and I didn't look.
atmosphere.
I didn't take a look at the weather forecast, but assuming that they can continue to do halfway decent from a defensive side of things. To me, the big difference in this game is where's the running game between the two different sides of things. X amount of weeks ago, we would have said, well, Denver has no running game anyway, but as stated, out of nowhere, their third string now running back in C.J. Anderson, which to me is one of the beauties of NFL football. And I hate to say it, and you hate to see guys go down and get injured, but it really gives a lot of guys out there an opportunity to fill in those spots. And it just goes, in my opinion, goes to show you how versatile and talented these guys are. When you got like the third string running back turning basically the last 5 games turning into an all-pro, basically never saw snaps or few snaps is really great to see. I do think the home, plus I also picked Denver at the beginning of the season to be the Super Bowl champions. I can't change things, and again, thanks for asking. Denver.
Denver.
Dave took the Colts. Going out on a limb. Again, no explanation, so I got to think it's because he's a big Trent Richardson fan.
Wow.
That's my assumption.
Yeah.
So he thinks that Richardson's going to run all over the Broncos. I'm going to go out on a limb and agree with Dave. I can't pick 4 home teams this week, and a little preview. I might go with Green Bay in the next game. We'll see. But there's always one upset that you just don't expect in this week. There's always one that you just don't see coming. This is the one I picked. I don't have a lot of great reasons other than Manning and the Broncos have not looked like they did last year.
Sure.
They've not looked like they did even in the first half of this year. They've changed it up, and that's worked for them. If they suddenly need to just shift it into gear again, is that going to work? Yeah, probably, maybe, who knows. But I like the Colts coming in there and pulling off one of these completely unexpected upsets. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, cool.
If it happens, I won't be upset.
No, and I can't root for Denver at this time of year, so it's got to happen. The final game, though, I think it's the game of the week. I love all these, Baltimore, New England could be interesting.
Does anyone notice he always gets to cover the game of the
Yeah,
week?
he puts the agenda together.
That's
let the guy do it.
Fair enough.
I mean,
All right.
yeah.
Well, okay.
Indianapolis at Denver could be a good game. Carolina at Seattle, again, with the runway aspect, could be an exciting contest, I guess.
Zoolander style. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
However, Dallas at Green Bay looks like it's going to be a game. First time since 1967 NFL Championship, the famous Ice Bowl. First time that Dallas has traveled to Green Bay. Now, in the mid-'90s, we had some Green Bay at Dallas games, and those were actually pretty good too. And on the way up, the young and exciting Brett Favre going up against the veteran Troy Aikman back in the day. But we got it the other way around.
Concussion number 10 by that point in his career.
We flipped the script. We're at the frozen tundra of Green Bay, although I don't know what the weather is going to be like this week.
23 at game time.
23, that's Fahrenheit.
23 Fahrenheit.
Okay, so that's cold.
Making that negative 5-6 degrees Celsius for you Celsius.
But not Ice Bowl cold, just cold.
No.
Just cold.
So,
I mean, just your average day in Green Bay.
Average day in Green Bay. Okay, so it's going to be a nice cold game. It's going to be fun. We're ready for the rejuvenated, revamped Tony Romo-led offense of the Cowboys to go up against the Green Bay Packers, who are just, of course, all-stars in this regard. You got Aaron Rodgers, you got Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, it's going to be a good game from an offensive standpoint. I think if you're a lover of great defenses, you might be a little disappointed here because, well, these are not two of the best defenses in the NFL. Although Dallas, again, as I mentioned earlier, they've been surviving all season kind of on their turnovers. They still give up the yards, but they keep the scores respectable by turning the ball over. Aaron Rodgers doesn't tend to turn the ball over, especially at home. So whether or not he's able to keep that intact and avoid throwing picks, whether or not they're able to avoid fumbles, that may be the key in the game when we come down to it. And, Green Bay's got to step it up and make a few stops against the run. If Dallas goes back to their running game and starts pounding it out like they've been all season, again, we're going to see a totally different game, I think, than if they get in a shootout. If I was Jason Garrett and coaching the Cowboys, I would go up there and I would make them stop DeMarco Murray. I would just pound that ball and see if Green Bay's defense can do it.
Yeah.
Because if not, then you can just keep that score close. You can hold on to time of possession. You can make it a one-score game at the end. And then as we've seen, they've got as much quick strike capability as anybody in the game. Terrence Williams last week scored a couple. Des Bryant, one of the top receivers in the game, obviously.
Yep.
On the other side, of course, you've got Randall Cobb. You've got Jordy Nelson, both of whom also can score big-time touchdowns whenever they need to. Nelson gets more yards generally. Cobb gets in the end zone.
Sure. Yeah.
They work it out. I'm excited to see this game.
Yeah.
I can't help it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I hope.
I think it's going to be high scoring.
It's going to be high scoring. I hope. It's for us, it's the primetime game. It's the Sunday at 7 o'clock game. It's the game that we're all around to see and watch, maybe even together. Who knows? We're going to have a viewing party. We'll see. But I'm excited. This is going to be a good game. Green Bay. I'm going Green Bay. I think at home, if it was in Dallas, I think it would be an even better game, really, actually, if you avoid the conditions. And you'd really see probably a track meet. In Green Bay, we might see it taken back a notch. We might see it come down to one score. But I think Green Bay is going to get that last score at home.
All right. Is it my turn again then? Thanks for asking about my opinion on this matter. Listen,
you get tired of that.
You said it earlier, the fact that you can't root for Denver almost ever, let alone this time in the season. I cannot root for Dallas ever, let alone this time of the season. In fact, it almost was to my demise the fact that we had so many Dallas games in the pick'ems.
Yeah.
Because every single time I rooted against them, and they ended up 11-5, I guess, in the season, or 12-4 was it?
That hurts.
So yeah, that hurt my thing. I guess from my side of things, there's been a lot, and you haven't talked about it yet, so I'll bring it up, and that is the question marks related to Aaron Rodgers' calf. So at first, it was a pulled calf. I just read a couple days ago, or maybe even today, that now it's apparently a little bit of a tear. But in the end, let's be honest, there's really nothing that's going to keep him from playing the game.
If they have to roll him out,
yeah. Is there a medical condition called a stomped calf? Because that.
Yeah, exactly. That also is there. So listen, from my side of things,
it's called the Sue calf.
The Sue calf. It's the new.
There's question marks related to that, and depending on his mobility and whether or not he gets nicked up. Obviously, as discussed, NFL is a very brutal game. Football is a very brutal game. Depending on how he can maintain himself. With the hurt calf, is he going to get hurt a little bit more? Is he going to stay healthy? Are they going to be able to give him enough protection? Can he get rid of the football quick enough? Listen, he's a somewhat mobile quarterback, and if the calf ends up acting up on him a little bit, that could change the dynamics of this football game. To me, there's two things in this. One is I hate Jerry Jones.
Right.
Second, I hate the Dallas Cowboys. Third, I hate Chris Christie. The possible governor of New Jersey, possible Republican candidate for presidential 2016 run.
Possible president of the United States.
Possible president of the United States. Who is the governor of New Jersey and is seen in the press or the luxury, the owner's box with Jerry Jones giving him hugs and stuff like that. I think they get grab butts and stuff periodically.
They
actually,
look a little sweet.
They
on
look
each
a
other.
little, whatever. So you add all of these things
here.
together at this point. not looking good for the Dallas Cowboys, number one, so they lose the football game. And secondly, it does not look good for Chris Christie and the 2016 presidential campaign. On to you, Katie.
We've
Poor thing.
taken a big detour there. The presidential picks. I like Green Bay at home. Whenever Green Bay's at home, I said that's a place that's very hard. That's brutal conditions, very hard to play. And also they've got that's a place with the whole city behind you. I mean, it's a city-owned team. I also tend to think about watching more of the Bengals suck in the playoffs. I do remember Dallas also taking the proverbial pipe in the playoffs a number of years. And yeah, I don't think the conditions are favorable, but I think it will be close and I think it'll be high scoring. I think the big question mark is for me behind Green Bay's defense, if they can contain. And if they can put a stop to the running game, it's in the bag.
You'd think Chris Christie would be a Jets fan. Because, I mean, you know...
Well, if you're in Jersey, are you
Jersey,
either a Giants fan or
but,
a Philadelphia fan?
He kind of looks like Rex Ryan, right?
Oh,
I mean,
I was actually wondering where that was going. Yeah, no, that's exactly. Listen, when
like
he comes and then says, "Hey, listen, I've been a long time Dallas fan, blah blah blah." I don't care. As you said, when you're from New Jersey,
you fake it.
Sure, you get a couple of Jets fans, whatever, that can happen. But basically, depending on that line, either you're Central or South Jersey, you're a Philadelphia fan. You start getting up into the Northern Jersey, you're a New York Giants fan. I mean, listen, it's just not. Had people known this long enough, he very well may never have been elected. Actually,
yeah, that's true. He's going national though, so he's going America's team.
Closet
That must be
blah
it.
blah blah.
Speaking of, Dave's our Cowboys guy this week. Dave has called the Cowboys to win this game. I'm assuming it's because he doesn't, he's approving.
He doesn't want to see Green Bay.
No, he's approving of Chris Christie going against Rex Ryan, and so he hates the Jets. Thus, he's all for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Transference in psychological terms. Yeah.
So I don't know, but yeah, no, I mean this game. It's an easy call to say this is the game where the road team wins this week because they look like probably out of all of them the strongest contenders. Out of the 4 road teams this week, they look like the ones that could go to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And other than Baltimore's history, you wouldn't pick them to go to the Super Bowl. You only consider that because they've done it. They've gone this path before. But if you were just looking at them this season and taking away the history, you wouldn't think that. No. And, Carolina, obviously not. And Indianapolis, you wouldn't think it. So out of the 4 road teams, Dallas looks the most Super Bowl worthy of the 4 of them. It's a pretty reasonable pick.
Speaking of Super Bowls, Joel.
Should we do our Super Bowl pick?
Segue.
Nice
segue.
We're kind of getting there.
Let's start with Dave. We're already on him.
Yep.
I'll let you. Well, you know what? Let's recap though. Let's go back. Start of the season. We all had to make Super Bowl picks. The ones were here, and mid-season we did it as well. So let's talk about those. Start of the season, I came out strong. I said, you know what? The New Orleans Saints. They are looking really good this year. Coming into the year, they've got the offense. They've had a year.
I watched their training camp, and I was really impressed.
I was really impressed. This Drew Brees kid, he looks like an up-and-comer.
10 losses later.
10 losses later. That may not have been my best pick. Although it's not my worst pick, which was the Cowboys to be the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
That was my worst preseason pick. But my other side was New England. I said, Saints over the Patriots. So at least one of my Super Bowl teams from the preseason is still running. So that was an early go. Mid-season, I switched it up a little bit. I went with the Packers and the Steelers. Now, I think I had the Steelers winning. I don't remember exactly, but I think I had the Steelers winning. So basically, my 2 losers are still in the mix. So that's who I'm going to go with now. I'm going to go with the Packers and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And let's go with the Packers because I can't call for another Patriots Super Bowl. Let's say the Packers over the Patriots, kind of sticking with some of my earlier predictions sort of a bit. And that's what we got.
So at the beginning of the season, I went with a rematch of the Super Bowl from the year before. That's Seattle-Denver. I then had this winners being switched around.
Denver
over Seattle. This was also the time during the halfway point of the season that Seattle was looking like it had a few shaky holes, quite a few big
Might
shaky
not make
holes.
The playoffs, right?
Had quite a few big
shaky
holes.
I think I saw that video.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result, I decided, well, because we also had the opportunity to make a few changes, I only went with one change. I kept Denver in there, and I went with Detroit Lions, who made it at least to the playoffs before losing. Gosh, I'm just going to go back with what I had at the beginning of the season. Should have stuck with it completely the entire time. That's Denver and Seattle. And although Seattle's looking like the team to beat, at least in my camp, with the defense and still the offense and the running side of things, I'm going to keep it with Denver. Stick with my opening statement. Keep it there. Yeah. Should I do the Dave thing? Because I
Yeah, but let Katie go.
All right. Well, I didn't have an opening season pick, as I had not yet joined you, but I went with Green Bay and Denver in my final, and that still could happen. So I say battle of the snowy, cold, veteran teams, quarterbacks, whatnot. But of the two, I still haven't kind of decided. I'm curious to see what happens this week. I'm sticking that both those teams win this week.
Flip a coin.
You got to do it. I mean, that's...
You got to make the pick. Come down on the side.
I like Aaron Rodgers. I'm going with Green Bay.
All right, 2 for Green Bay.
Oh.
Dave?
Well...
Do you want a cigarette?
No. So, yeah, Dave, I mean, listen, he hasn't changed his opinion. He thinks that the New England Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl, even though we all thought that they were burned and done at the beginning of the season. He obviously had the power to continue and push through. So he sticks with those guys, and he has made a major flaw with going with the Dallas Cowboys as the other contender, the other Super Bowl challenger to end up losing.
At the start and at midseason, he had New England, but he had the Saints as well.
Exactly.
So he stuck with them even in midseason.
And then I don't know who he went with.
No, it was New Orleans over the Saints.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
Or New England over New Orleans in both.
He didn't change it.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Well,
So.
I think he's also started post Chris Crispy.
Chris Crispy. Rice Crispy.
A campaign Brady 2016.
He
in the White House.
very well may have.
I think that I see.
He'd look good on the runway.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, he
Comes
does
down
have
to
that almost abnormally white smile. If you could
Yeah.
picture him in a campaign photo, it's like.
I
my
mean,
gosh.
best looking couple since JFK and Jackie O. Anyway, I mean,
gosh.
holy cow.
Now I'm like
Oh man,
envisioning
Giselle Bundchen as the
Man,
first lady.
Jesus. Showing what?
Now I'm envisioning another Carolina New England rematch in the Super Bowl and the post game. Oh my gosh, dreamy. All right, we'll see if it comes to pass. But that's it. That's all we got.
Hey.
No other big topics. It's just all about the games, baby. Our next show will be videoed a little late, and if we bother to put it out there, it'll be late because we're going to do a live show from Pointers for the AFC and NFC Championships. Looking forward to that, and of course, we'll do something for the Super Bowl. We'll see what we can do. Maybe do a 2-game set or 2-show where we talk about it before, and then we do a little something during the game and whatever. Anyway, looking forward to it, and we'll hope you join us then. See ya.